Salutations, one and all. It's your boy, Handsome Frank, wearing glasses. Because, well, I like to be able to see when I drive. And I keep getting shit on because I'm not wearing them often. And my fiance, Sam, well, hell hath no fury, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about anything super serious today. Sorry, I had some chocolate in my tooth. But what I do want to talk about is videos I've been seeing online by Brandon Straka, the Walk Away campaign. Now, it's real cool that he's walking away from the left and bringing a lot of people with him. Now, I walked away from the left fucking decades ago. Decades and decades ago. So it's story time. Sorry about the, I'm taking these off. Don't hate me. But, I walked away from the left a very, very long time ago. So, I would say get ready for story time. So, I guess maybe a little background on me. I'm a 36-year-old man. Now, I grew up in housing projects all my life because I was raised by a single mom who is no longer with me. She passed away at the age of 47 from liver cancer. And for all the Americans that think Canada has the best health care, we don't. My mother was told literally, we're not going to put you on a liver transplant list because we feel it's your fault, even though it was actually their fault. I don't want to get into details, but it was their fault, and that's what happened. It's what you call, what's the word I'm looking for? A death council, where people decide whether or not patients that patients that require serious surgery, whether or not they actually deserve them. Now, that's not something you would see in the States, right? You have insurance, you're going to get taken care of. That happened to my mother. Anyhow, my mother, she was on disability. In Ontario, we call it ODSP. And she raised me alone. Now, my father was fuck nowhere to be found. Took off when I was around, I would say 1.5, and never paid child support. So my mother was legitimately on her own, raising me. And I didn't make that job easy at all. But she was a very good mother. Now, because of that, it living in places where they weren't the best, right? Living in living in housing projects in London or in Toronto. And a lot of bad things happen there, as I'm sure you can imagine. And for the longest time, I towed that liberal line. Because in Canada, you don't have Republicans and Democrats. You have multiple parties. You have the Liberals. Fuck them. You have the Conservatives. And you also have the NDP, which was the actual former Communist Party. You also have the Bloc Le Québécois, which are a socialist party out of Quebec that focus on separatism. You also have the Green Party, and as I'm sure you can imagine, the Green Party is all about the environment. In fact, the leader of the Green Party, before she was ousted after the last election, she would call all white Canadians settler Canadians. You believe that? Settler Canadians. So regardless of the fact that Canadians have been here for hundreds of years, we were settler Canadians. Anyway, so yeah, I grew up in a very liberal situation, right? Because, you know, liberals love to keep the downtrodden down, so that way they can spread their bullshit about how they are the only ones that can help, and the conservatives or the Republicans are the bad guys, or the racists, etc. Now, I thought that way, wow, well into my 20s. I would say 26 before I had my awakening. Now, this was after my mom passed. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make this sentimental or anything. I always have this fear that if I tell somebody my mom passed at an early age, I feel like they may think that I'm trying to get sympathy, but that's not the case. And anyhow, so after my mother passed, I started dating this girl. Her name was Kira. Just like my dog, actually. My dog and my girlfriend had the same name. Speaking of which, I had to put my dog down yesterday. My dog of 21 years. It was very hard. But it was funny because people would always say, Frank, how does the dog and the girlfriend know who's being called? And I said, well, it's all in the tone, you see. If I say, Kira, then the girlfriend knows I'm talking to her. If I say Kira or Kira, then the dog knows I was talking to her. So I really didn't start becoming a conservative until I met my ex's mom, Mary Lou. Now, Mary Lou is a tremendous woman. She lost her husband years and years ago, and like my mother, she had been doing it on her own, you know? She had 2 girls, and she was busting her ass. Sometimes it would work, sometimes not. But, you know, and I would always think to myself, wow, you know, you have this generalization about conservatives or Republicans being old, rich, white guys. And the most conservative person that I have ever met in my life happens to be a woman who is a single mom that is always on the verge of losing her house and has next to no money. So I guess that generalization is shattered. But she was a great woman. I owe my conservative awakening to her. And she's become like another mother to me. So much, in fact, that even after her daughter and I split, we're still very, very close friends. And now, I wouldn't normally do that, but she left such an impact on my life that I couldn't just up and leave, you know? I hate these new cigarettes. If you don't smoke them all at once, they go out. Now, the funny thing is, we would talk, right? We would talk about politics, and she would always say the same things to me. She would say, Frank, you're a conservative. You just don't know it yet. And I'd get mad, right? Because I always thought I was a socialist. I was a proud socialist. And it really pissed me off that this woman was breaking those walls down. And I would fight it. She'd say, you're a conservative, you don't know it. And I would fight it, and I'd say I would never be a conservative. I hate conservatives. Our prime minister at the time was conservative. His name was Stephen Harper. I said, I hate Stephen Harper, because I knew how much she loved him. And, I even said to her, well, you guys are Nazis. Keep in mind, I was stupid at the time. And then I started to realize, the things I was saying to her really were that of a conservative male. I was against high taxes. I said to her one time, I paid, and keep in mind, I wasn't a rich guy. I said, man, I just paid almost 20 grand in income tax. And that's almost 3 people, or just about 3 people on welfare for a year. And I said, where's my fucking thank you letter? And I noticed, I'm paying all these taxes. Nothing's changing. I go downtown as I go to work, and I see people standing outside the welfare office collecting free money. They're not looking for work. They're sitting there with their boyfriend, hanging out with their stroller with the baby in it, and just doing nothing. And then there was others selling dope, right? And it struck me, well, why am I paying these taxes? Just for people to take advantage of the system. Take advantage of the system and not even attempt to get themselves a job. Because in Canada, I'm not sure how it is in the States, but if you're on welfare in Canada, in Ontario, it's called Ontario Works. You have a worker, and you get such and such money, bus pass. But there's also other criteria, such as you have to look for work. And on top of looking for work, you also have to go to a class at this place called Pathways. And in Pathways, mind the train. In Pathways, they would teach you different skills depending on what you wanted. So if you wanted to learn about light maintenance, they would teach you about light maintenance on vehicles, things like that. And they would set you up with a co-op, and more often than not, it would set you up with a new job. There was heavy maintenance. There was a bunch of courses. And I had to go on welfare once because I had knee surgery years and years ago. And I couldn't work. Simple as that. I'm not going to get into the details. But I went, and I learned a lot, and I got a job through them. Now, the job didn't last forever, as things usually don't. I like to say, everything is like milk, has an expiration date. Relationships included. And I noticed these people not going, not taking it seriously. Even the people that did go, they would fail, and they would just show up. Because with Ontario Works or welfare, it didn't matter if you passed. It just mattered that you went. And to me, that was a big problem. So I started noticing all these things, right? Started noticing all these things, and they really, really started to bother me. And as I brought this up to Mary Lou, she would tell me, yeah, this is the Liberal government. And then I would look more and more into it, and how the Liberal government of Ontario would rip the people off. For instance, we were the most indebted sub-sovereign nation in the world. We had more debt than California. Fucking California. Imagine that. And we're talking about a province that has maybe 15 million people compared to California. Then you would look at, even schools. There would be 15 students a class, so they could hire more and more teachers, which would cause them to build bigger schools or put portables in, right? And it was creating a situation where people were making so much money simply working for the government. Now, we have this thing called the Sunshine List in Ontario. And what that is, it's a list of public workers that make over $100,000 a year. We are to be told who these people are, because again, that's our money, right? And the number of people on the Sunshine List kept growing, and you would see fucking teachers on there, you would see people that worked for the hydro company on there. And I'm not talking about somebody that took a dangerous job working on a crane for Hydro One. I'm talking about people that would answer phones. They would work so much overtime that they would hit $100,000. Now tell me, should anybody who answers a phone for a living, should they be making over $100,000 a year? That's my best Stone Cold Steve Austin. I know, it's pathetic. So, as this started to bother me, my friend Mary Lou would tell me that this is a byproduct of liberal government, that and redundancy. And she's not the type of person that would sit down and just take it. So she would, one of the times she would go, she went to City Hall, and City Hall in London is what you call redundant city. So she would go and say, look, we're over budget, and this is how we can cut the budget. And she'd point out that one department would have 6 people in it, and 5 of those people were redundant. They were doing the same job as the person that hired them. So in all actuality, they didn't actually need them, right? They were just there to collect a paycheck. Because, you have friends in the municipal government, they're going to get you a job. It's as simple as that. And that kept happening. And, as she explained these things, and keep in mind, I did my own research, right? I didn't want to take her word for gospel. So I looked into things myself, and I realized, the liberal government is taking us for a ride. They own just about everything in this province. I mean, the beer store, they own it. The liquor store, they own it. You look at something like cigarettes. Cigarettes in Ontario cost, and this is for a budget brand, costs about $14 for the cheapest pack. And to me, that's just outrageous, right? Because we're shit on for smoking, and yet they use all that extra money in tax from us buying those cigarettes to run their programs. And then there's the booze, right? The liquor store. And in those cases, about 80% plus is all taxes. So it was things like that that was really, really bothering me. And the straw that broke the camel's back was the hydro company in this province. It used to be called Ontario Hydro. Now, they ran hydro for the whole province. And they decided, hey, we're going to be nice guys, and we are going to split the company into 5 different companies. Well, what they didn't tell you was the government owned each of those 5 different companies. And what they also didn't tell you was the cost of the hydro became so expensive that there was a saying, and there still is, you either heat or you eat. Because especially seniors cannot afford to heat their home and eat. They have to choose one or the other. And these companies, well, not these companies, the one company, Hydro One, they are relentless in collecting their money, because in their minds they're doing a good thing, right? They are doing the rest of us a favor, even though they are charging crazy, outrageous sums of money. I mean, the time is split in what they call peak hours. So the lowest peak hour was from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. during the day. Now, at the lowest, it was well over 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, keep in mind, 10 years ago, they had a flat rate, and it was 4.5 cents or so. So even at the lowest rate possible, it's still 100% more expensive. And then you get into mid-peak, and mid-peak being 7 to 11 a.m. and 5 to 7 p.m. And that usually, last time I checked, was over 12 cents a kilowatt hour. And then you had on peak, and on peak, last time I checked, was over 18 cents a kilowatt hour. And that was from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. You know, when everyone is home. So, as I learned these things, I came to the conclusion that the party, the Liberal Party that says they're all for the people, they're all for the workers, were gouging us. They were taking us for everything we owned. And it's true. So, at a certain point, I decided, you know what? It's time for me to say goodbye. I can no longer call myself a liberal or an NDP. Like they call themselves New Democrats. I could never call myself a New Democrat. All I could ever say is I am a conservative, because I believe in small business, and, you know, I always look at it this way. Liberals, if somebody is hanging on a cliff, a liberal will hold a rope down and let you hang there, whereas a conservative will drop a ladder and give you the tools to climb yourself out of that hole, if that makes sense. And that's what I want from my government. I don't want my government to coddle me, and while they're coddling me, rip me off. So, everyone, this has been a boring video. I realize that. But that's a little bit of me and why I left the Liberal Party. And let me also add this. We had an election in October. Now, when you run an election and there are 5 or so parties, it's not like the States, right? With 2 parties. And God, I wish it was. But there isn't equal representation amongst the provinces. So if you can manage to win Ontario, parts of Quebec, and the Maritimes, so that's the provinces on the East Coast that are, islands in the Atlantic. If you can win those provinces, then you can win the election, right? And that leaves provinces like the middle of Canada, like Saskatchewan and Alberta, that does give Canada the most money. Their voices don't get heard. So right now, there is, and this should show you the just how fragmented this country is. So Quebec wants to leave Canada because they always want to leave Canada, but Alberta wants to leave Canada, and Saskatchewan also wants to leave Canada. So our idiot Prime Minister talks about how we're a unified country, but 3 out of the 10 provinces want to leave. So, my friends, thank you for listening to this super long video. I didn't mean for it to be. Like, subscribe, comment, especially, comment if you had any similar experiences, why you left the Liberal Party or the DNC. I should say at the last, I was going somewhere. The last election, the Liberals won a minority government. Now, in the States, a lot of you don't know what that is. A minority government is when a party has the most seats, but they don't have 51% of the seats. So they are a minority government, and the opposition combined has more seats than them. Oddly enough, the Conservatives actually won the popular vote, only we didn't march with pussy hats on and scream about how it's unfair. So, my friends, thank you for listening. You can always catch me on Twitter, and I'll talk to you next time. All right, peace.